Very warm welcome. Let's take a look at the top story that we are tracking for you. European Union leaders met on Thursday to discuss ways to fight new variants of the virus and step up vaccinations to combat the ongoing virus crisis in the region. Leaders from across the 27-nation bloc agreed in a video conference to keep tight restrictions on public life and free movement as the bloc races against the emergence of new variants. EU Chief Charles Michel admitted on Thursday that Europe's coronavirus vaccine rollout could continue to struggle in the coming weeks before picking up speed. Now, the European Commission and EU countries have come under fire for inefficiency in their joint inoculation program that has lagged far behind countries like Israel, Britain and the United States. With summer just around the corner, there is a fear that another holiday season will be lost to the ongoing pandemic. The southern EU nations are pushing for vaccine passports as a solution to revive the dwindling tourism sector. Greece, where tourism contributes nearly 25% of its GDP, has been leading the call for an EU-wide vaccine certificate to ensure that it can benefit from summer tourism. Spain, Austria and Bulgaria have also backed the call for an EU-wide virus passport in the region. Germany and France, however, have shown more reluctance to the idea, with officials saying that it would create de facto vaccination obligation and could prove to be discriminatory.
J'attire tout de suite l'attention sur le fait que, quand je dis passe sanitaire, c'est que ça ne peut pas être soumis au vaccin. Parce que si on arrive à un moment dans le printemps à rouvrir certains de ces lieux, nous ne saurions conditionner leur accès à une vaccination, alors même que nous n'aurions même pas ouvert la vaccination aux plus jeunes d'entre nous. Ce serait invraisemblable.
Meanwhile, the bloc has also warned 6 governments, including Germany, about unilateral border restrictions to curb the spread of the virus. According to the European Commission, the recent closure of frontiers by several EU countries to curb the spread of the virus variants has been disproportionate and did little to stem the virus. Now, Germany, meanwhile, has downplayed the need for border restrictions in the region. German Chancellor Angela Merkel said on Thursday that she currently has no plans to introduce controls on the French border to the Moselle region, which has seen a surge in variants first detected in South Africa.
Grenzkontrollen stehen zurzeit nicht auf der Tagesordnung. In Tschechien und Österreich war es ja so, dass die jeweiligen Landesregierungen sich das ausdrücklich erbeten haben vom Bund. Das ist hier überhaupt nicht der Fall. Das Gegenteil ist der Fall. Die Region Moselle sucht mit dem Saarland und Rheinland-Pfalz ganz bewusst Absprachen. Die französische Seite hat ja heute auch schon bestimmte Einreisebedingungen definiert. Man kann Definitionen für Pendler machen. Der Krisenstab wird sich damit nochmal befassen, in welcher Form dort eine Einstufung erfolgt. Aber Grenzkontrollen stehen nicht auf der Tagesordnung.
Now we're being joined for more on this by Chelsea Delaney, a DW correspondent from Berlin. Thanks for being with us on this broadcast. Now, the EU leaders came to this summit facing heavy criticism over the slow vaccine rollouts. Will anything actually change now?
Well, the EU is sounding very optimistic that this or soon we'll really see the turning point where vaccinations will really start to pick up. A lot of people remain quite skeptical of that. The EU has said and continued to say yesterday that it plans to vaccinate 70% of the adult population by the end of summer. Only about 8% of the adult population has been vaccinated so far. A lot of that is due to the fact that the EU hasn't received as many vaccine doses as it was promised from vaccine manufacturers like AstraZeneca or the Pfizer-BioNTech alliance in the first quarter. Some of that should begin to change soon because the EU has put a lot of pressure onto these companies to increase production. They're now saying they're going to try and make up that shortfall. But a lot of EU countries are also struggling to get the vaccines they have to people. Countries like France and Germany have only used about 50 to 60% of the vaccines they've gotten. So there are millions of vaccine doses that are being unused. So there's really a lot for the EU that they need to be working on now. Yesterday, they really signaled a lot of optimism, but there is going to be still quite a lot of skepticism that they'll be able to meet these goals of getting the majority of the population vaccinated by summer.
Right. Chelsea, officials also discussed proposals from countries like Greece and Spain for a vaccine passport that would then allow people who are immunized against the virus to travel more freely. Now, is the EU behind this idea? Critics say that this could make the vaccine a de facto obligation.
Yes, this was actually one of the concrete outcomes of yesterday's summit. The EU has decided to back a digital vaccination certificate that would be basically recognized throughout the EU, potentially around the world. Some countries think that this vaccine should be used to allow people who've been vaccinated to have special privileges, so they could travel without quarantine restrictions, or they could go to the theater, to the gym. Countries like Greece and Spain, as you mentioned, very tourism dependent, have been pushing that, but there still is a lot of controversy over that idea because, as you said, it could potentially it could creates a de facto obligation, but it also is seen as unfair for some people, especially younger people who won't be getting the vaccine for several months because of this tiered rollout system. So the EU is deciding to create a digital vaccine certificate. They say it could take a couple of months. Potentially they have it ready by the summer, but there still isn't clarity on what exactly that vaccination certificate would mean in terms of whether you could go on holiday or return to normal life.
Right, and another hot topic that was discussed at the summit was the border closures. The EU this week told 6 countries, including Germany, to ease border restrictions recently introduced and put in place to contain the spread of the virus mutations and different variants. What came out of these discussions?
Well, I would say these discussions are really just at their start. The topic of border closures has been very controversial throughout the coronavirus pandemic because the idea of free travel across Europe among European countries is really a cornerstone of the European Union. So we've seen countries try to introduce border controls and get really criticized for it. There's been a new wave of that because of these new variants. So Germany a few weeks ago started to shut down parts of its border with the Czech Republic, with Austria, where some of these variants of the coronavirus are prevalent, and that's caused a lot of chaos, not just for supply chains, for truck drivers trying to get across the border, but also for commuters, for families that are split across these countries. So the EU has told these countries, these 6 countries, that they need to respond. They have a week to basically justify these border controls. For now, we've seen countries not really making any changes to their policy. Germany, for example, has said that it needs these border controls to prevent the variants from really taking hold even more across in some of these regions that border, for example, Austria or the Czech Republic. But for now, Germany is also saying it doesn't want to introduce new border closures with France. So they seem to be towing the line a little bit here as we wait for more clarity from the EU.
Right, Chelsea, thanks for bringing us all the latest details coming out of the EU.